Hello, welcome everybody. These are the Wednesday webinars which are organized by Pune River Revival. We mainly work for rivers, and we are here to reach out to maximum people and let them know what river rejuvenation is and how rivers should be. So as part of this webinar series, last week we had a webinar with Maitreya, who is an environmental lawyer, and he walked us through the environmental clearance to the riverfront development project that is going on in Pune. So we actually ran out of time last week, and we could not go over all the questions. So this session is a follow-up session where we are going to discuss the questions. So what we will do is we'll start with the questions that were in the chat last week first, followed by the questions that are there as comment on the last week's video, and then we will take the questions you are putting here today in the chat box. But feel free to ask questions in the chat box, or later on you can even unmute and discuss with Maitreya directly. So Maitreya, welcome once again.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Okay, so the first question that was there was that, how we discussed there were, I believe, 18 conditions were there, right? By SIA,
Yes.
the state level environment impact assessment authority, they had specified 18 conditions for the PMC. So the first question is, what if more than 50% of conditions are not satisfied? What happens?
So there isn't any sort of legal provision which has any specific amount of compliance after which it becomes something that is a problem. So say you've complied 60%, it doesn't really matter if you've complied 60% or 70% or 50%. There's no legal limit after which you can say that it becomes a problem or it doesn't become a problem either way. The fact of the matter is that each condition in the eyes of the law has just as much legal validity and needs to be complied with in the spirit of the law. And simply because, so the point of the matter is not that the amount of specific, the specific number of conditions needs to be calculated, and then we need to see that whether X amount or X percentage has been complied or not. The point of the matter is, even if one condition has not been complied with, but the effect of that condition is significant, and the impact that that condition is going to have is likely to be substantial, or the fact that non-compliance of that condition amounts to a serious violation of law, then then there is, legally speaking, something that can be done about it. Alternatively, say if 90% of the conditions are also unfulfilled, but all of those conditions are, so to speak, not as significant, not as wide-reaching, not as impactful, or not do not amount to legal violations per se, then that will not be significant or sufficient for the courts to sort of cancel the project or squash the clearances that have been given. So effectively, the percentage of how many conditions have been complied or the percentage of how many conditions have not been complied with is not an important factor. What matters is which condition has been complied and to what extent it has been complied. If that is something that is focused on, then I feel that something, then a persuasive argument can be made before court. But beyond that, to say that 50%, 60%, or any amount of percentage of conditions have been either complied with or not complied with, neither side can use that as a justification. For example, if we go to court tomorrow and say just one condition has not been complied with, but it is seriously fatal to the whole project, and PMC comes and says, "Arey, but we have complied with 80% of the conditions," the court is not going to, in theory at least, agree with that because the one condition that they didn't comply with was also significant. So the point is that we need to see what the condition is saying and how it has been implemented. That is what's important.
Okay. Uh, Then there is another question which says that can we say that the RFD is encroachment? असं आपण म्हणू शकतो का की RFD हे एन्क्रोचमेंट आहे असं आपण म्हणू शकतो का? असा प्रश्न आहे. हॅलो.
Yeah, sorry, did I drop off for a bit?
ओके ओके. प्रश्न असा आहे की RFD ला आपण एन्क्रोचमेंट म्हणू शकतो का?
RFD ला पण encroachment म्हणू शकतो का? That's a good question. And I guess that is something that will be uh, figured out in the subsequent. There's a petition filed before the High Court to delineate to remark sort of the flood lines, the red flood line and the blue flood line. So त्याच्या अंतर्गत जर हायकोर्टाचा असं म्हणजे असा निकाल लागला की the point at which the blue flood line has been marked actually RFD has been constructed within it, then it would amount to an encroachment. So, that's a very valid point. पण अजून एक मुद्दा असा आहे की just recently, I think कालची बातमी आहे that there was a news item yesterday which said that the PMC has also taken sort of some steps and the senior levels, like the commissioner and the additional commissioners, have gotten together and they have, to reduce the probability of floods or to reduce the intensity of floods. One of the directions that has been given to the, say, the additional commissioner of estate section or the various different additional commissioners and commissioners is to essentially remove the encroachments that are currently existing in uh, along the riverside. So the PMC is saying that they need to act swiftly to reduce and to remove all the encroachments that are currently found in within the river bank. So the PMC is also acknowledging that this is a problem. The PMC is saying that because of these things, flood situation can arise and get intensified. And in fact, they want to now try to solve this problem by removing the encroachments. One of the solutions they provide or they prescribe is that they are saying that the RFD will be a solution to flooding. It's not the other way around. So they are saying that flooding is a problem. We also realize it, but RFD is going to solve the problem. Otherwise, their idea, short-term solutions, I think what they have said is that we need to ensure that all encroachments are removed from the river banks and that those don't exist. So that is one short-term measure that this is suggesting, and they're saying that RFD is going to be a solution. So I personally see this as a bit of a contradiction. On the one hand, you're saying we want to remove things, remove debris, remove encroachments from within the river banks. And on the same thing, you're saying that the RFD is going to be a solution, which is in fact adding more encroachment, adding more construction in the river banks. So there's a little bit of an inconsistency. But I think this is a good thing because slowly and slowly it's becoming more and more clear that you do any construction or you add any kind of material in the river bank, and that is going to lead to a exacerbation of flooding. त्यांनी
राईट.
पूरस्थिती वाईट होणार आहे हे आता सगळ्यांना कळतंय आणि दिस इज बिकमिंग कॉमन
मान्य व्हायला
नॉलेज.
लागलंय.
हो हो. म्हणजे मान्य झालंय, मान्य झालं आहे. आपल्याला नुसतं आता ते जोडायचंय की आता तुम्ही मान्य केलं ना एन्क्रोचमेंट प्रॉब्लेम आहे, चांगलं झालं. आता RFD ला पण त्या लिस्ट मध्ये जोडा. तेवढं
करेक्ट.
आपल्याला तेवढं त्यांनी एक्सेप्ट केलं की मग विषय संपला. आणि जस्ट नाव दॅट आय एम ऑन दिस पॉइंट, द सेम थिंग हॅपन्ड इन हैदराबाद. हैदराबाद मध्ये पण त्यांनी एक रिव्हरफ्रंट डेव्हलपमेंट प्रोजेक्ट प्लॅन केला होता मुसी रिव्हरच्या काठेवर. आणि that project was scrapped because they studied and they found that it was in fact having a exacerbating effect on flooding in Hyderabad. And म्हणून त्यांनी तो प्रोजेक्ट स्क्रॅप केला होता RFD चा. सो
वा.
हो, तर असे असे पण म्हणजे सो फ्लडिंग इज अ व्हेरी इम्पॉर्टंट बिकॉज if any government, if it comes to light ki त्यांच्या कार्यामुळे परिस्थिती वाईट होतीये. म्हणजे लोकांचं basically their lives are in danger because of some development work that is being done. If this connection is made in the public's mind, that's a very dangerous thing for any government to try to sell to the public. They
खूपच
can't ultimately.
खूपच
So
चांगली बातमी आहे
हा
हैदराबादची.
हो
अं,
हो ही म्हणजे 1-2 वर्ष झाली आहे त्याला माझ्या मते. एक
अच्छा.
दीड वर्ष वगैरे तर नक्कीच झालंय.
तर
सो असे
पुराच्याच संदर्भातला पुढचा प्रश्न आहे, की आपण गेल्या वेळेला म्हणालो होतो, की त्यांना हायड्रॉलॉजीचा रिव्ह्यू करून रिपोर्ट द्या अशी एक कंडिशन आहे. अँड द क्वेश्चन इज डिडंट दे गेट हायड्रॉलॉजी रिव्ह्यूड बाय मिस्टर सुर्वे, their retired chief engineer, and that his review said everything was good. So didn't that actually already happen?
Yeah, so this hydraulics, there have been many hydraulic study which have already happened. There has been in their detailed project report there was a hydraulic study. CWPRS also undertook a hydrology study, if not hydraulic study. So there have been various studies already done. This specific one, I think, is on the limited aspect of uh, uh, effect of RFD on natural stormwater disposal into Maitreya River. So I think on this limited point, they want a specific study to be done. But there have been various studies already done which have evidence that ह्या प्रोजेक्टमुळे पूरस्थिती वाईट होणार आहे, रिव्हरची कॅरिंग कॅपॅसिटी कमी झाली आहे. All of these things have been mentioned before the court also. They have been scientifically assessed, and I'm sure people like Sarang Yadodkar have talked at length about this. I'm sure there are videos of it online also, and maybe he's done a session with PRR. I don't know.
No, but
But
Survey's report says
so
that
they,
this is good, right? RFD is good. His report says, right? Or no? Or there is no.
I don't know personally Mr. Surve's report मी ती वाचली नाही, पण आतापर्यंत नाही, so the CWPRS report has clearly evidenced की किती पाण्याचं राईज होणार आहे. So what is going to be the change in the water levels and how much that water is going to now spread? कारण तुम्ही जर रिव्हर मध्ये कन्स्ट्रक्शन करतायत तर पाणी जाणार कुठे? So where that additional water is going to go, how much area it's going to spread, हे सगळे ऑलरेडी ही स्टडी झाली आहे. सो पण त्यांचं काय असतं, ह्या स्टडीजचं काउंटर काय असतं PMC ला, ते येऊन म्हणतात की नाही नाही, वी विल टेक ॲडिक्वेट मेजर्स, वी विल डू सफिशियंट मिटिगेशन, टेक्नॉलॉजी विल बी इम्प्लिमेंटेड वगैरे वगैरे असे काहीतरी जेनेरिक रिस्पॉन्सेस देतात. सो even in the face of a study which says that this is something that is dangerous, what you guys are planning is dangerous, हे आपल्याला स्टडीच्या अंतर्गत दिसतंय. स्टडीचा निकाल जो आहे ते हेच आहे की इट्स अ डेंजरस ऍक्टिव्हिटी, डोंट गो अहेड विथ इट. त्यांचा रिस्पॉन्स हा नसतो की वी विल स्टॉप डुईंग इट. त्यांचा रिस्पॉन्स हा असतो की ठीक आहे, आता हे प्रॉब्लेम आयडेंटिफाय झालंय, याला सर्कमवेंट कसं करायचं. सो त्यांचा विचार त्या, सो अ स्टडी, my point is this, that a study is not fatal to the case of whatever project that they're trying to push, because that study is used not as a way to cancel the project, or as a way to say that this project should now be stopped, but it's viewed as a way of seeing what is the deficiency in the project, so that I will try to remedy it through some whatever measures. आता ते मेजर्स खरे युजफुल असणार की नाही हे ह्यावर मी कॉमेंट करत नाहीये. I'm simply saying that that's what the real world effect of a study is not that you take that study and then you go to the court and you say that, see, because of this study don't allow it. What really happens is they take that study, they see that okay, this is the problem. So sometimes they actually work on a solution, sometimes they manufacture a solution, and then they sell it to the government, to the judiciary and to the people. So that is really the point of a study that I have seen.
Right, right.
I so
A,
the
a, a related question is that how do we get Mr. Survey's report? Is that do we have to file an RTI for that? How do we get that?
if it's public record, then definitely. Yes, also this. Mr. Surve's report is the same one that's mentioned in the 18 conditions letter, right? शेवटी इथे लिहिलंय की after deliberation committee decided to recommend the proposal for EC to CR subject to compliance of above points and the report submitted by Mr. Avinash Surve. If that is the case, then yes, it's definitely public record is part of the case. We can file an RTI with who did he
Yes.
submit the
So we
report
need
to?
to file an RTI for that. And I'm just taking Manish's question because it is related. Is the CWS report available in public domain?
I don't know about if it's available in public domain, but I know Mr. Yadvarkar definitely has it. I also might have a copy somewhere. I'm not sure. But CWPR चा रिपोर्ट त्यांच्याकडे नक्कीच आहे. तोही पब्लिक रेकॉर्ड आहे खरं तर, कारण तो कोर्टात सबमिट केला गेलाय. So if we file RTI, we can get that also. But I'm sure Mr. Yadvarkar might be able to help out with that, since I'm fairly confident he has the documents. त्यांच्याकडूनच मला माहिती मिळाली. So that's how I know of it. So I'm assuming that he still has it.
There is a question here. I think it's a bit different question. It says, how does monitoring address effects of what is being monitored? Isn't this condition letting PMC off the hook by saying, see, now we have these 100 monitoring stations installed and they are working perfectly fine. So basically what it means is that they are saying that you monitor this, monitor that out in those 18. So how monitoring is going to really change the devastating effect that it is the very
Yeah.
effect it is causing.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's आणि हे मी मागच्या सेशन मध्ये पण हेच म्हटलं होतं की काहीतरी कंडिशन्स ह्यासाठी घातले गेलेत सो दॅट यू कॅन शो लेटर ऑन की सी वी हॅव ट्राईड टू अड्रेस ऑल द रेलेव्हंट इश्यूज. सो मॉनिटरिंगचा हा जो प्रश्न आय थिंक इट्स रिलेटेड टू मॉनिटरिंग ऑफ द फ्लड डिस्चार्ज लेवल्स. सो PMC's one of the 18 conditions was that they have to monitor flood discharge levels at every 100 meter in the constructed stretches and monitor flood discharge levels at every 1 kilometer for the remaining length of the project. So you're absolutely right when you say that what is the point of this monitoring if there is no effect of the monitoring results, if I understand the question correctly. की नुसतं तुम्ही monitoring सांगताय तर त्याचा काय अर्थ आहे? I mean, it's like saying, my house is on fire, go and see what the temperature is. It
Right.
it doesn't really make any difference if you're not doing anything with that, with your understanding. So,
Basically, there is no quantification mentioned for anything. की हे मॉनिटर केल्यावर अमुक एक पॅरामीटर ह्याच्यापेक्षा कमी किंवा जास्त असेल तर
बरोबर बरोबर
तुम्हाला
की त्याचा इफेक्ट काय?
हा तर तुम्हाला याची परमिशन मिळणार नाही किंवा हे कॅन्सल होईल, हे तुम्हाला क्लिअरन्स मिळालं असं कुठेच काही
हो
म्हणणार नाही.
हो ना. आय मीन सो शेवटी त्यांनी म्हटलंय की बेस्ड ऑन द कम्प्लायन्स ऑफ द अबव पॉइंट्स. बट तेच म्हणतो आता
Compliance
कम्प्लायन्स
म्हणजे
ऑफ द अबव
what
पॉइंट म्हणजे काय? तुम्ही
काय?
मॉनिटर केला,
There is no
संपला विषय.
quantification. What is called as compliance? And there is a related question. So I'm taking that. Gangotri asks, are the conditions only to submit the report or any action against the faults are expected? For example, transplantation report will show less than 50% success. So basically, again, she is saying the same thing, that what about the quantification?
Yeah, so by this letter itself, there is nothing that you can say that they have mentioned this will be the effect of your monitoring results. तर तुमच्या monitoring results मध्ये हे दिसलं तर मग असा त्याचा निकाल लागेल. None of this has been mentioned at all. So this is for us to take to court and go and use. Now, if it comes to, again, it depends on the condition. So if the condition relates to tree plantation and the fact that that has not been a successful, say, condition that they have complied with, or the survival rate of trees is low or whatever, then the court will simply say that, hey, listen, just make sure that you ensure that the trees survive, or make sure that the plantation activity is carried out by so and so date, and then you monitor the growth for the next 5 years, or you hire an agency who will do it for you, and then you submit a report every month of compliance before us. असं काहीतरी ते करतील. So if it's about tree plantation, that's not going to be fatal to the project. If
एक मिनिट म्यूट करता का?
मला बरं बॅकग्राऊंड वाचायला पाहिजे पहिलं.
हॅलो. Yeah. Okay, there is one very basic question, but most of us had this question. What does that PP stand for in the document? It says PP.
PP is project proponent. But I'll just come back to the point I was making. See, the monitoring tree plantation levels is not important, but monitoring flood discharge levels is very important. So if they do it, we can use those results, what the flood discharge levels are, what their monitoring results are. We can go to court and say that for these stretches, it is evident that RFD is leading to an exacerbation of flooding. Therefore, for these stretches, at least no construction should be there. You know, so it is, so monitoring for tree plantation is not going to be a very important thing, because tree plantations जर त्यांनी नाही केलं, court will say go and do it, संपला विषय. But with this, there is a very serious effect of the monitoring results. That effect is that if their results are uh, pointing to the fact that RFD is leading to an increase in flooding, or is reducing the water carrying capacity of the river to such an extent that it's going to lead to flooding, if say 50,000 cusecs of water, 60,000 cusecs, whatever is normal every sort of rainy season, if the result that comes up from that water monitoring result, flood discharge level monitoring result, uh, if that result is seriously detrimental, then we can use that and go to court and say that don't allow RFD in these particular stretches. So it is very important. That monitoring result is much more important than the tree plantation monitoring result. दोन्हीकडे मॉनिटरिंग लिहिलंय, पण एकाचं मॉनिटरिंग विल बी व्हेरी सिग्निफिकंट in making sure that the project is stopped. दुसऱ्याचं मॉनिटरिंग और असल्या टाईपचे कंडिशन्स जे आहेत त्यांचं मॉनिटरिंग ते इतकं इम्पॉर्टंट नाही. कोर्ट फक्त त्यांना प्रोजेक्ट प्रपोनंट पीएमसी ला सांगणार की तुम्ही ह्याचं दुरुस्त करायचे का, त्याच्या पुढे काय होणार.
Manish?
या ऍक्च्युली त्या ट्रीज बद्दलच विषय निघाला होता, म्हणून मी जरा इंटरव्ह्यू केलं मध्येच. सो आय डू ऍग्री दॅट ट्रीजचा विषय ज्युडिशियल पॉइंट ऑफ व्ह्यू किंवा या सगळ्या लिगल पॉइंट ऑफ व्ह्यू महत्वाचा ठरत नाही. बट just I wanted to slightly have a different kind of take on this. Ki, where do we find this information? Ki, ata for example, they have mentioned that there are something like 22,150 trees in the existing plot area. म्हणजे जो काय RFDचा सगळा आहे. This figure is again questionable considering 88 kilometers of the stretch, म्हणजे 44 into 2. Number of trees to be planted 30,000 and number of trees to be cut 11,000, number of trees to be transplanted 11,150. तर 2-3 questions actually arise out of it. One is ki what is the criteria ki which trees are going to be cut and which trees are going to be transplanted. Is there any kind of a scientific criteria behind this? Number two, as you also know, ki, since these are the trees on the river banks, many species are very specific to the riparian zone, की ज्या ट्रीजच्या रूट्स ना सतत ओलावा लागतो. म्हणजे राउंड द इयर, सिन्स दीज ट्रीज आर इन टच विथ द रिव्हर प्रॅक्टिकली, आणि तशी त्यांची सगळी इकॉलॉजी असते किंवा तशी त्यांची सगळी रचना असते. नाव if these trees are going to be transplanted somewhere on the hill slopes आणि अशा ठिकाणी, बेसिकली जागा कुठं मिळणार आहे ट्रान्सप्लांट करायला, हा एक अजून एक मोठा त्याच्यातला हे आहे. आणि if all the river bed is going to be they are going to sort of completely reconstructed, त्यामुळे तिथं जागा मिळणार नाहीये ते ट्रान्सप्लांट करायला. So if these trees are transplanted into a new environment, which is not their natural environment, again this question of survival rate becomes really serious question. आणि त्याचं estimated survival rate काय आहे? So whether this kind of information we can get through RTI or something like that, or how
Yeah.
we can get that?
सो ह्यात 18 कंडिशन्सच्या शेवटी त्यांनी असं म्हटलंय की स्टेटस रिपोर्ट हॅज टू बी सबमिटेड टू whoever that expert panel is, consisting of an expert in hydrology, irrigation and tree. ह्या 3 विषयांवर जी तज्ञ समिती आहे त्यांच्याकडे तुम्हाला दर महिन्याला स्टेटस रिपोर्ट द्यायचा आहे. स्टेटस रिपोर्ट म्हणजे कंप्लायन्स ऑफ दी अबव कंडिशन्सचा स्टेटस रिपोर्ट. So that those status reports ultimately will be very crucial to us to understand how much compliance has happened, and त्यातच ही माहिती मिळेल. With regards to your other points, that the trees that you find in a riparian zone of a river cannot simply be picked up and put anywhere, हे अगदी बरोबर आहे. And that's why the tree plantation success rates are abysmal throughout. Less than 50% in most cases survive. What is the criteria is something, well, as to which trees will be cut and which trees will be transplanted. I mean, I'm not an expert in the subject, but whatever limited understanding I have, Tatna, I can tell you that if a tree grows beyond a certain width, it becomes impossible to then transplant it afterwards, because the root system has also spread that wide, and I guess it simply cannot be picked up and put in in a new sort of environment. But if a tree is of a smaller, if the width or the girth of the tree trunk is smaller, and if it's of a younger age, then those trees have a higher probability of being successfully transplanted. So that is, in my opinion, the only sort of
So does that mean if a tree is like 100, 200 years old, they will
yeah,
just
there's no chance. There's no
they'll
chance.
simply cut it down? Isn't there any law
There's
not to cut down these old growth heritage trees?
it's not a law not to cut them. The law basically provides a few additional safeguard measures for these heritage trees. There is per se no law which prohibits felling of heritage trees, and I don't think based on my limited scientific understanding in this field, and what my discussions have been with people who are experts in this field, it's not possible to transplant really old growth trees which are over 100 years and all. It's simply not possible. Their canopies, as wide as they are, quite often the root system is also that wide. So it's simply impossible to excavate that much out and take the tree out in its entirety. तर ते शक्यच नाहीये, कारण तुम्हाला तेवढं हे सगळं
नाही,
एक्सकवेशन
मग
करायला लागेल.
हेरिटेज ट्री बद्दल काही लॉस नाहीये? लॉ नाहीच आहे?
नाही, आहे ना, मी तेच म्हणतो की हेरिटेज ट्रीजचे जे लॉ आहे ते ऑफर अन ॲडिशनल सेफगार्ड. So as per the Maharashtra Tree Act, there are certain provisions for tree felling. तुम्हाला जर एकही झाड कापायचं असेल तर त्यासाठी परवानगी घ्यावी लागते. पण त्यात 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 त्यातही म्हणजे there are some the procedure that has been prescribed for felling of a regular tree as opposed to a heritage tree is slightly simpler. The procedure for heritage tree involves a few more steps, and it also, so there are certain exemptions which are given for normal trees. Those are not there for heritage trees. So in that way, an additional layer or additional couple of layers of protection has been provided for heritage trees in under the Maharashtra Tree Act. पण असं कुठेही लिहिलं नाहीये की just because a tree is a heritage tree, it cannot be cut. This is
But
not a
for
law.
example, now I'm asking the other way around. Like I want to cut down a heritage tree. What permissions do I have to take? What
The
steps
same
do I have to
permission,
take? नाही, मग
the same
काय घ्यावं लागतं मला? मला
additional हे बघ, additional
पाहिजे.
additional हे आहे की तुम्हाला जी प्रोसिजर आहे त्यात you have to specify that it is a heritage tree. You have to advertise it so. There is a provision regarding deemed permission. So essentially, when a particular application is made, समजा माझ्या घरी मला 2-3 झाडे माझ्या बॅकयार्ड मध्ये कापायची आहेत. I apply on today is the 11th of December. I apply if within a stipulated time period, I think it's 45 days at this point, the proposal that I have submitted to the government is not either accepted or rejected, म्हणजे त्यावर काही निर्णय घेतलाच नाहीये, तर then it becomes a deemed permission that I have received. So as per the deemed permission, I can assume की आता 45 दिवस झालेत, मी प्रपोजल माझा पाठवलाय, त्यांच्याकडे पोहोचलाय तो, त्यांनी काही निर्णय नाही घेतला, so I can assume I can go ahead and cut this tree. So this deemed permission provision applies for regular trees. It does not apply in the case of a heritage tree. सो आता मागेच जो आमचा साधू वासवानी ब्रिजचा केस झाला होता, तो ह्यावरच आधारित होता की द पीएमसी इज ट्राइंग टू hide the fact that there are many heritage trees in this area, because then that takes away from what's it called? That takes away from this probability or possibility of having a deemed permission. So you cannot have a deemed permission if there is a question of heritage trees, which means that a decision has to be taken by the authorities on that subject. They didn't want to go through that whole thing. That's why, they didn't want to advertise that they are going to cut, say, 30, 40, 100, how many ever heritage trees were in that area. त्यांना ते ऍडव्हर्टाईज करायचं नव्हतं, त्यांना त्याचा जाहिरात द्यायचा नव्हता, आणि त्यांना डीम परमिशनचा फायदा घ्यायचा होता. That's why they hid the heritage trees fact. There's another factor also which comes, is that the age of a tree is the so say you have a 100-year-old tree, then you have to plant 100 trees of 1 year, say for example, or 50 trees of 2 years as compensation for that. असं काहीतरी त्यांचा एक रेशिओ पण आहे. So the older the tree is, the more amount of compensatory plantation you have to do for felling. That's another reason why they hide the age of the trees. So these are the few additional, you can say, protective layers that heritage trees have been given. There has to be an advertising that this is a heritage tree. That kind of public notice has to be given to the public in newspapers. The deemed permission provision does not apply in the case of heritage trees, and the compensatory plantation is higher in case of heritage trees. Other than this, there is nothing that
But
specifically
as
protects or
as
relates to heritage
Manish
trees.
asked, as Manish asked, की
Yeah.
ती समजा 100 वर्षाचं झाड पडायचं म्हणून मला 1 वर्षाची 100 झाडं लावायची. तर
Hmm.
असं नदीकाठ सापडायला पाहिजे, कारण ही झाडं नदीकाठीच येतात. तर असं
हो.
नदीकाठी एवढी जागा ते कुठून आणणार, हे त्यांना दाखवावं लागतं का झाड
नाही
पडण्यापूर्वी?
नाही नाही
नाही
हे
दाखवावं
आणि
लागत?
नाही हे खरं तर हा खूप मोठा सायंटिफिक लूपहोल आहे, की यू वुड जस्ट अज्युम दॅट वन ट्री इज द सेम नो मॅटर वेअर इट इज. की तुम्ही कुठनंही झाडं कापून कुठेही लावली तरी त्याचा परिणाम एकच होतो, इज दी अझम्पशन.
त्या जातीचं झाड लावणं कंपल्सरी आहे का, ते पण कंपल्सरी नाही?
नाही, तेही कंपल्सरी नाहीये.
अच्छा, म्हणजे मी कुठलंही झाड पाडून कुठलंही झाड लावू
म्हणजे ते सांगतात आणि प्रयत्न करतात की नेटिव्ह असो, किंवा मग बऱ्याच प्रोजेक्ट कंडिशन मध्ये असंही असतं की फ्रूट बेअरिंग ट्रीज, म्हणजे फॉर एक्झाम्पल इफ इट्स अ प्रोजेक्ट दॅट हॅज टेकन लोकल ऍग्रिकल्चर लँड, तर मग कॉम्पन्सेशन मध्ये आम्ही प्लांटेशन करू इथे, आणि मग म्हणजे तिसरीकडे, आणि मग तिकडचे जे शेतकरी आहेत त्यांना मग त्याचा फायदा होईल, बिकॉज देन दे कॅन यूज दोज फ्रूट बेअरिंग ट्रीज. असे पण कंडिशन कधी कधी टाकले जातात. पण असं काही कंडिशन नाही की तुम्ही ह्या जातीचं झाड कापलंय म्हणून त्याच जातीचं झाड इथे लावायचं, किंवा मग म्हणजे तुम्ही रिव्हर बँक पाशी झाडे तोडली आहे, तर मग रिव्हर बँक पाशी कुठेतरी दुसरीकडे झाडे लावायची, असं पण काही स्टिप्युलेशन लॉ मध्ये नाही.
वा.
हो हो,
आता
खरंच.
गंगोत्रीचा एक क्वेश्चन आहे, जो युट्यूब व्हिडिओवर आहे. तिचं असं म्हणणं आहे की द रिपोर्ट सेज डिसाइडेड टू ग्रांट, दॅट डज नॉट मीन ग्रांटेड, दॅट मीन्स दे हॅवंट ग्रांटेड द EC yet. Is that right?
I mean, technically she is right, but it's effectively the same thing. So both for the PMC, this operates effectively as an EC. आपण जर कोर्टाकडे गेलो तर आणि म्हणालो की नाही हे बघा इथे ग्रांट लिहिलंय, पण त्यांना ECचं पत्र नाही मिळालं, म्हणून तुम्ही थांबा तोपर्यंत, पत्र मिळाल्यापर्यंत, कोर्ट ऑल्सो वोंट अग्री टू दॅट, बिकॉज इफेक्टिवली after SIA has decided to grant an EC, there is no additional step that happens after that, except the issuance of the letter of EC. So just that one step is that one procedural formality is left. Other than that, the grant of EC by SIA is the final step, as I mentioned, which has to be taken. After that is just the letter is sent to them. So this effectively, she's right. that there is a difference, but it doesn't amount to, it's a distinction without a difference, you can say.
So the next question is today's question by Amit Singh. There was
Hmm.
some confusion about the SIA and SIAC. The
Hmm.
latest is that all their conditions have been waived by the MOEF. I don't know what MOEF is. How true is this news? What will its implications be if the waiver has been announced?
Hmm. Uh, I I also have heard this being said.
What
कि
is MOEF?
ह्यांची condition MOF is the Ministry of Environment and Forest. Central governmentचा environmentचा जो विभाग आहे, केंद्रीय government, state government of India. So the basically the highest environmental governmental body in the country. I have heard this, but I haven't read any newspaper report that supports it, or I definitely haven't seen any official document. So I can't say that that's a thing. But I would be a little hesitant to say that they would waive all the conditions because that's completely against the orders of the court. And I mean, these conditions by themselves also is not like are leading to RFD being stopped. So RFD is still going on. It's possible that we, the public who are interested in this cause, will take up these conditions and try to ensure that there is some monitoring done. But I don't see, because it's a risk, if the government just waives off these conditions, they come off looking quite bad, and they come off looking like directly against the court's orders. So I don't know if it's worth it for them to take that risk, बिकॉज असंही नाही की ह्या कंडिशन्स मुळे त्यांचं एकदम खूप काहीतरी हिंड्रन्स होते त्यांच्या प्रोजेक्टमध्ये. सर, I would be hesitant, but it's possible. It's possible that that's the case. In which case, we have a real solid case to go back to court and say that these serious conditions have been waived, which amounts to a gross violation of the court's orders. कारण कोर्टने स्पष्टपणे सांगितलंय की तुम्हाला only on additional conditions being imposed on you can you go ahead with the project. So there was a reason the court said that. So you can't simply then, decide after the court is done ki, I mean, after the order is done by the court, you can't simply say that no, no, whatever has been done, we'll just waive it and cancel it. If that's the case, then that's a contempt of court, and then you can go to court and re-agitate this issue. That's why I feel that they wouldn't do it, because they don't want this issue to keep going back to court. But I cannot rule out that possibility with this government. काही होऊ शकतं आणि आपल्याला त्यावर काहीतरी ऑथेंटिक बातमी बघावी लागेल.
ओके, द नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन इज जो ते आपण गेल्याला जे डॉक्युमेंट पाहिलं त्यातला पॉइंट नंबर 8 of
हा.
that conditions. Will you please see and explain it, the first explanation in it?
So the condition 8 says PP to submit the detailed note of water carrying capacity of the river after commencement of the project. Oh, so this is definitely a very important point. आणि मी मागच्या सेशन मध्ये पण हे हायलाइट केलं होतं. See, the water carrying capacity is going to get reduced is something that has been said from day one by the people who have been against this project. So scientifically हे verified fact आहे की ह्यांनी water carrying capacity कमी होणार आहे रिव्हरची. And it's definitely one of those points that मी मागच्या सेशन मध्ये पण सांगितलं होतं की ह्याचं आपल्याला मॉनिटरिंग करावं लागेल. आणि जे काय whatever the results of whatever the project proposed, whatever PMC puts out in compliance of this particular condition amongst a few other conditions will be integral when we go to court, if and when we do go to court. So because we are saying that the water carrying capacity is going to get reduced, and the court and scientifically also this is very easily provable. Their response to that is that they will be removing obstructions, they will be clearing bridges, they will be removing other hindrances in the flow of water under the RFD project. That's why whatever reduction in cross section is there will not be a problem, because the PMC is going to remove all the other obstructions from the river and make it flow freely. असं त्यांचं म्हणणं होतं. So this water carrying capacity is a very important point. We are saying that, or rather the people who have agitated this case in court have always said that the water carrying capacity is definitely going to get reduced. It's a clearly established fact. And if the PMC thinks that there are obstructions in the flow of the river, some bridges somewhere, some other encroachment somewhere, then they can be cleared without constructing the RFD. So those two things don't have to be, are not, they are mutually exclusive. So you can remove obstructions in the flow of the river, and at the same time you cannot construct additional embankments on the river banks also. So this point is definitely a very important point, but it's a pretty straightforward point. Is there any specific explanation that is needed, or is this sufficient?
I think
It addresses.
it looks good to me. If another question comes, then we'll see. ट्री आणि ओल्ड ग्रोथ ट्रीज आणि हेरिटेज ट्रीज हे सगळं पुन्हा एकदा इथला सगळ्यांचा हळवा कोपरा असल्यामुळे पुन्हा एक त्याच्यावर प्रश्न आहे की कॅन बायोडायव्हर्सिटी ऍक्ट बी अप्लाइड टू हेरिटेज और ओल्ड ग्रोथ ट्रीज?
I mean, not see the Biodiversity Act. I don't see how it would be a beneficial legislation to apply over here, because we want basically the law to say that if uh, a tree, unless there is a very serious reason, should not be felled. That is our basic premise, and that is the only sort of law that is going to lead to, tree felling being reduced. Or if we want to prevent tree felling in Pune or anywhere across the country, actually, the point of the matter is that unless we have a law which explicitly, I can say, prohibits or prevents the felling of trees, it's going to be very difficult for us to go to court, any court, be it the NGT, be it the Supreme Court, be it the High Court, it doesn't matter. It's going to be very difficult for us to go and make a compelling case as to why that tree needs to be protected. It's effectively nearly impossible for us to go and say that a tree needs to be protected, because you're always countered with this bogey of development. That some trees are necessary to be cut because we can't prohibit development. So this is really the problem. Biodiversity Act चं कसं आहे की, see, the Biodiversity Act basically is a procedural act. There are very few of these kinds of prohibitions that I mentioned, ki protect nature per se, that the Biodiversity Act also provides. It mainly deals with, say, the establishment of the biodiversity boards, the biodiversity management committees. Now, if a biodiversity management committee uh, has formed some kind of, if in Pune there's some biodiversity management committee and त्यांचा काहीतरी report आहे which says that these trees are a part of the biodiversity of Pune, or it accords them an appropriate amount of, you can say, respect, or it values them, so then perhaps something could happen, but it's a very long shot to assume that, because it's not like even the things that are protected under the Biodiversity Act don't, get damaged, or the plants or the species or trees or whatever. It's not like they are protected just because they have been covered under the Biodiversity Act. So by itself, the Biodiversity Act is largely procedural, in my opinion, and there are very few things that the act by itself gives us. It deals with biological resources, it deals with knowledge sharing, and those kinds of things. That's really the import of the Biodiversity Yeah.
Just one question, because while explaining, you talked about the development thing, but when there is this development, then they really go ahead and cut down trees or
Mm.
whatever. Can
Yeah.
we argue that this is not the development in terms of, like building a highway or an airport, which
Mm.
really would can be categorized as a development? This is the way you are building some footpath or
Mm.
some jogging track. In that sense, it is not a development where you say, if we don't have this airport, then it affects our development. You can't really say that we don't have this jogging track and our, or we don't have
Mm.
this cafe here and our
Mm.
development is affected. So can one argue like that?
I mean, one can, but who's listening to those kinds of logical arguments? मला तर कधी कधी हेच वाटतं. कारण बघा ना, there they first had called this project also riverfront development because त्यांच्यासाठी all kinds of म्हणजे when I say त्यांच्यासाठी I'm not saying की म्हणजे ते कोणतरी फरके आहेत, ते पण आपल्यातलेच अनेक लोकांना पण हेच वाटतं की बांधकाम म्हणजे डेव्हलपमेंट होतंय, की आधी जिथे नेचर होतं आणि विल्डरनेस होतं तिथे आपण जाऊन काहीतरी आपला स्टॅम्प लावलाय. ह्यालाच थोडक्यात डेव्हलपमेंटचं एक म्हणजे डेव्हलपमेंटची परिभाषा हीच आहे असं मानलं जातं. सो you are absolutely right that these kinds of things, I would say even sometimes bridges are just being pushed under the name of development, roads are being pushed under the name of development when there is no need for it. There is absolutely no need for so much of like some could say the metro also is a questionable form of development. आता अनेक लोकांना वाटतं की हे डेव्हलपमेंट खरं आहे, पण म्हणजे आपण असंही म्हणू शकतो की इतका पैसा तुम्ही त्यात घातला, इतके संसाधनं वापरले, इतकं सिमेंट कॉन्क्रीटचं हे झालंय आणि तरी तुमचं म्हणजे इट्स नॉट इफेक्टिंग दॅट लेवल ऑफ चेंज. It's not revolutionized the public transport sector in Pune. So what have you achieved? Was that really development? You spent I don't know how many tens of thousands of crores on building the metro, and in the and you've been told that this is development happening in the public transport sector, but the results are not equal to that. So I would say even the metro is a failed development project, or it's not development basically. पण आता अनेक लोकांना हे म्हणजे खूप चिडतील माझ्यावर असं म्हटल्यावर की
राईट,
असं
राईट.
कसं म्हणू
नाही,
शकतो.
म्हणून मी मेट्रो वगैरे म्हणत नाहीये, मी अगदीच
मी म्हणायला तयार आहे ना,
राईट, राईट.
मी तेही म्हणायला तयार आहे. मी म्हणतो की
हा.
एअरपोर्ट तुम्ही म्हणता ना, तेही
हम्म.
कधी कधी त्याचंही आपण जरा
बरोबर.
हे बघायला काय. कोल्हापूरमध्ये एअरपोर्ट बांधले, किती त्यातनं फ्लाईट्स निघतायत. म्हणजे ते
राईट,
असे अनेक एअरपोर्ट्स आहेत ते नुसतं बांधले गेलेत अँड नथिंग इज रिअली हॅपनिंग. अँड इनफॅक्ट आय वुड से दॅट let's be wary of that kind of even if we agree that that is development, let's be wary of that. कारण एअर ट्रॅफिक वाढल्याने क्लायमेट चेंज वर काय परिणाम होतो हे सगळ्यांनाच माहिती आहे. सो इज इट समथिंग दॅट वी वॉन्ट टू कीप एनकरेजिंग? We know how difficult it is for many people to access air traffic, to access air flights. So
राईट.
because of many reasons, so financial or whatever. So should we keep encouraging that, or should we then utilize that money to make the ST transport uh,
बेटर.
stronger?
राईट.
That would be development, I would say. So डेव्हलपमेंट कुठेही कसंही वापरला जातो, त्याला आजचा काही अर्थ राहिला नाहीये. अँड दॅट्स वन ऑफ द प्रॉब्लेम्स इज दॅट नेचर इज बिंग seen as being against development, the
राईट.
opposite of development. Ecology on one side, economy on the other side.
Manish has a question.
नाही यालाच एक कनेक्टिंग जस्ट क्वेश्चन आला म्हणा की नाव हायकोर्ट हॅज गिवन द ऑर्डर टू रिड्रॉ these blue lines and red lines. So
Yeah.
that is still an exercise work in progress,
Hmm.
which is happening. Now, as Prajakta was saying, this is the river bank beautification project, which is
Hmm.
a discretionary project. So can we not say that with a precautionary principle to be held की त्या ज्या नवीन ब्लू लाईन रेड लाईन ज्या काय आहेत त्या
Hmm.
ड्रॉ करेपर्यंत हा प्रोजेक्टला त्यांनी ग्रीन लाईट दिला नाही पाहिजे. टिल ऍटलीस्ट दॅट पॉइंट दे शुड होल्ड ऑन टू दिस प्रोजेक्ट बिकॉज considering the sensitivity of this project for the floods.
See, you're right about that. In theory ते केलं पाहिजे. पण आता PMC चं हेच म्हणणं आहे ना की आमचं प्रोजेक्ट फ्लड लाईन मध्ये नाहीच आहे. Or whatever we are doing is
प्रेझेंट
not
फ्लड
going.
लाईन मध्ये नाहीयेत असं म्हणतायत ना ते.
हा, तेच.
सो
So 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 for
न्यू
us
फ्लड
to
लाईन मध्ये
say,
कुठं काय माहिती आपल्याला.
हो ते असणारच, ते तर
Actually,
साहजिकच.
Gangotri has the same question here. She says, before finalizing the red-blue line, how can the RFD work be started? Can we say how can you start this when the lines are not even finalized?
No, yeah, that's very true. It should not be allowed. It definitely, and not just the blue flood line, red flood line, but all of these conditions also that they have stipulated, these 18 new conditions, they need to first be studied. It's completely true. I agree with that, but that's not how the administration sees it. They think of it as, see, we have not uh, pointed out that there has been any construction that happened in the floodline that they have agreed to. We have said that, they have denied that. असं स्थिती इथेच येऊन संपली. And the court has agreed with them. The public also have not formed any opinion on this, so they tend to agree with the government. So on one side, you have a few people saying that no, no, this project is not where it should be, or it's in a place which is going to be detrimental to flooding in the city. There are some people saying that, but everybody else is saying that that's not true. So how do we prove that that's not true? We have to get the results by in the High Court case, the results will come out. But until that happens, there is nobody who's willing to believe us. There's nobody who's willing to say that this is actually in the floodline, where there is that consensus has yet to be built.
Right.
So if that consensus is not built, तर मग ते पुढे त्याचं काहीच होऊ शकत नाही.
I think we
आणि
are almost at 9 o'clock, so we'll take these last two questions. One is by Gangotri and followed by Santosh. Gangotri, please go ahead.
Court didn't ask that to provide any documentation or provide any proof that their project doesn't fall under the blue line.
no, I mean, I'm sure they have, they see, they will, this point did, I'm sure, come up, but they have said that it's not in the blue floodline or red floodline. So they have basically, the way they see it, whatever their facts are, as per their facts, this project is not in the blue floodline, red floodline, and even if it is, then this kind of construction is permissible in that area. असं त्यांचं म्हणणं आहे. This is what they are saying. So, so they are saying that no impermissible activity has been carried out, even if it is in the floodline. There is no impermissible activity that has been carried out. So that's what the stand is of the government. There are various places where, in my opinion, misrepresentations might have also been made, but now that's a settled fact. There's nothing that can be done. Specifically, this point I'm sure has come up before the court, but like I said, the PMC were of the opinion that their project is either not situated in a prohibited area, or even if it is situated in a restricted area, then the like that activity of construction of RFD falls within the permissible exceptions to prohibition of construction in that area. So basically, that's how they've gotten away with it.
अच्छा, मेरा सेकंड पार्ट यूट्यूब का वो शायद रह गया।
हाँ।
जो भी कंप्लायंस, जो भी रिपोर्ट सबमिट करने का कंडीशन है सिया का, तो इज दैट लिमिटेड to the submission of the report only, or if any outcome, negative outcome becomes, तो उस पे भी कुछ मतलब उसके लिए भी होल्ड पे रखा जाएगा?
मैं समझा नहीं, मतलब
जो भी कंडीशन है सिया का कि ये रिपोर्ट सबमिट करना है, ये डिजाइन दिखाना है, ये चेंज करना है, तो वो सिर्फ सबमिशन तक ही कंडीशन है, या फिर वो रिपोर्ट का आउटकम या फिर रिपोर्ट के रिजल्ट के हिसाब से अगर नेगेटिविटी कुछ निकलता है तो उसके ऊपर भी प्रोसेस चलेगा?
मतलब चलना तो चाहिए इन थियोरी, बट नहीं चलेगा, हमें चलाना पड़ेगा. तो आई फील लाइक you're राइट, इन थियोरी अगर यही टेस्ट रिजल्ट्स, जो भी मॉनिटरिंग रिजल्ट, सैम्पलिंग जो भी है, उसका नतीजा अच्छा नहीं आ रहा, तो the government themselves should take a step and halt this project or fix the problem. But I don't think that's what they're going to do. It's on us to take that step forward and to make sure that they're held accountable. They are not going to do it by themselves.
सिया भी कुछ, सॉरी,
नहीं, सिया का काम तो हो गया ना, सिया का काम हो गया। सिया ने अपना, सिया का काम था EI, मतलब एनवायरमेंटल इम्पैक्ट को असेस करना, वो उन्होंने असेस कर दिया है उनके हिसाब से। और उनका काम था कि देखना कि ये प्रोजेक्ट कितना एनवायरमेंटली डैमेजिंग या नहीं होगा, has it been appraised as per the law. That's what their job was. So I don't think they can act as a monitoring agency also. That becomes a little difficult because that's not really what they have been formed for. So I don't think they will do the monitoring. And there's no, so that's why they have given this thing that they have to form a 3-member panel to whom you submit status reports to act like some sort of a monitoring authority. But wo bhi, matlab, they are also going to be appointed by 3-member panel, is also going to be appointed by PMC also. So that's not a impartial panel. We have to be that impartial panel, or we have to be sort of raising our voice for the river because the government is not going to.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Santosh, please go ahead.
Maitreya,
Yes, sir.
not only the red and the blue lines we'll have to revisit, but what do you think, like the definitions for the blue and red line also needs to be revisited, because presently they are based on the last 25 and 100 years data, whatever we have.
Yeah.
But now with the climate change and the reports, we very clearly know that there will be an increase in rainfall by 37%, flash floods are going to increase. So don't we need to consider the next 25 years, some projections or those kind of things also? Because the basic definition of a red line and flood, red and blue lines are going to, means they may not fall sufficient to what is going to happen in the future. What's your
Absolutely,
opinion?
sir. I completely agree with this, that we need to reassess many of these figures. Red line, blue line definitely needs to be relooked at, because these kinds of 100-year statistical data, 25-year statistical data is not going to mean very much. And we have data to prove that also. So we already know what the situation is going to be like. And more importantly, we are seeing a lot of projects in the West which are now being undone because of this very situation. So a lot of
Correct.
the estimations that they had also made were based on kinds of these kinds of historical data that they had. But all of that data is proving completely irrelevant at this stage. And that's why there have been so many movements for removal of dams across Europe. There have been a lot
Absolutely.
of river rejuvenation projects also, where deconcretization takes place, because at some level we understand that the best protective measure that we have is to let nature be nature. If we try to go and solve the problem, then we just we exacerbate the problem, we make it worse. So at we will definitely come to a point where we have uh, floods which are beyond our estimation. That is something that is also, in fact, something that we have analyzed, and we can say to a scientific certainty that there will be freak events. So a freak event is something that might go even beyond the 100-year level. So that is
Exactly.
also something that is very much within the possibility. So even the current 100-year, even if we go by that, also that will not be sufficient. So you're very right that we need to reassess these numbers. We need to relook at it, and primarily we need to, if we are so fond of aping the West, whatever they are doing, let's also do that. Then let's actually start doing that, because what they are doing is genuinely, now they have realized for after 100 odd years of doing completely the wrong thing, they have woken up to the reality that it's causing some serious problems. And I'll just share one link in this in the chat box.
The chat.
Everyone can see this. This is a link of Sander. You guys might have heard of this organization that deals a lot in rivers. South Asia Network on Dams, Rivers, and People. It's called. So they have written an where's the chat box? They have written a piece on all the various RFDs that were cancelled. So do check it. It's a very interesting read, and I feel it can give us some inspiration and some guiding points also on how we can go about tackling Pune's RFD.
Sure. It's more than 9 o'clock. We will really take one last question. रेखाताई, तुमचा शेवटचा प्रश्न आणि मी त्याच्यानंतर सॉरी खरंच कुठलाही प्रश्न आपण घेऊ शकणार नाही. आपण ऑलमोस्ट 9:05 झालेले आहे आणि तरी आपलं हे दुसरं सेशन आहे.
हो, थँक्स प्राजक्ता. पॉइंट नंबर 9 वरती मैत्रेय प्रश्न आहे ते
अच्छा,
ड्युरिंग द
9.
मॉन्सून वगैरे नो आफ्टर
हाँ.
रेजिंग embankments arrangements for storm water drains must be ensured with planning of connecting surface water to nearest nala and direct surface access towards river must be ensured. एक्झॅक्टली याच्यामध्ये पीएमसीने काय करायचं आहे? त्याला असं म्हणायचं आहे का की जे येणारं सगळं पाणी आहे ते त्या निरेस नाला आणि ह्याच्यामध्ये ते त्याच्या आत जाईल आणि नंतर ते डायरेक्ट सरफेस ला त्याला ऍक्सेस मिळेल असं काही यांनी करावं असं काही याचा अर्थ आहे का? कारण त्याला जोडून पुढे त्यांनी फायनली म्हटलेलं आहे की हे लक्षात घेऊन त्यांनी ह्या गोष्टी कराव्यात. 9 नंबर जरा ओपन करून बघितलंस तर तुझ्या
हो
पटकन
हो
लक्षात
नाही
येईल.
नाही नाही अगदी
हा म्हणून
बरोबर.
हा जो पहिला पार्ट आहे ना की ते डायरेक्ट
हम्म,
त्यांनी करावं नाला आणि ड्रेनेजला स्टॉर्म ड्रेनेजला
हम्म.
म्हणजे हे नक्की काय करायचंय म्हणजे काही अर्थ याच्यातनं आपल्याला कळणारी गोष्ट आहे का असा मला प्रश्न पडला.
नाही ह्यांनी खूप हे 10 ओळी लिहिलेत. ह्याचं बेसिकली द पॉइंट इज जस्ट इन द लास्ट लाईन that what they have to do is they have to give thought to limit the height of embankments wherever possible. See, the point of this condition is to ensure that when this matter gets re-agitated in court, the government can say that, see, we have considered the fact that embankments are going to lead to a decrease in the water carrying capacity of the river and cause flooding elsewhere. So to avoid such so basically त्यांनी काय म्हटलंय, त्यांनी बरेच explanation केलंय. They are saying that during monsoon, even if there are no much floods in the river due to existing dams and control release from upstream reservoirs, nowadays high intensity short duration events like 2019 floods are occurring frequently. Hence, after raising embankments above ground level, the arrangement for storm water drains must be ensured with planning of connecting surface water to nearest nala and drains, and direct surface access towards rivers must be ensured with provision of water entry points in design of parapet walls and raised embankments. So
बरोबर
basically
आहे.
they're
हाच
saying
जो
की
पॉइंट आहे ना
हो,
म्हणजे
so
हे
त्यांच्या
बरोबर आहे
embankments
की
मध्ये त्यांनी डिझाईन करावं आणि त्यांनी हाईट कितपर्यंत आणायची ह्यावर थोडा विचार करायचा. That's basically all they're saying. This is basically an acknowledgement of the fact that embankments are going to lead to an exacerbation in flooding. म्हणून ते म्हणतायत की हे बघा आम्हाला माहिती आहे की हे होणार आहे. So to stop this, you ensure that there is a channel that has been made for the water to flow into the stormwater drains, and at the same time, the height is kept at a low. The height is kept low so that you are not restricting a greater amount of the cross section of the river. That's the whole point. So they are basically saying that embankments मुळे फ्लडिंग वाढणार आहे, त्याचं काहीतरी तुम्ही सोल्युशन मिटिगेशन मेजर्स मी आधी म्हणत होतो ना. दिस इज अ मिटिगेशन मेजर that you create the pathway for the water when the river overflows, which it will inevitably. That water can flow into the stormwater drain, and and you don't raise the embankments to such a high level where that water is basically spread wider because the river has gotten shorter. So that's the whole point of this point number 9.
ओके थँक्यू.
थँक्यू. ग्रेट.
Okay.
मैत्रेय,
Yes.
आपण तुझ्याबरोबर दोन्ही सेशन्स 1-1 तासाहून जास्त घेतले आणि तरी अजून आपल्याला गप्पा मारायच्या होत्या. मला वाटतं खूपच महत्वाचं झालं आणि आम्हाला सगळ्यांना खूपच स्पष्टता आली, क्लॅरिटी आली, कारण की हे डॉक्युमेंट त्याचा अर्थ काय आहे आणि त्याच्यावर आपण काय काय करू शकतो. मोस्ट लोकांच्या मनामध्ये हे खूप प्रश्न होते आणि ह्याच्यानंतरही मला वाटतं अजून खूप लोकांना प्रश्न आले तर आम्ही तुला चॅटवरती किंवा ईमेलमधून हे करू, किंवा अजूनही कोणाला प्रश्न
प्लीज
असतील तर आपण हा व्हिडिओ सुद्धा YouTubeवर टाकणार आहोत. केला पण टाकला आहे. त्याच्यावर तुम्ही अवश्य कमेंट्स टाका आणि आपण जितकी शक्य तितकी उत्तरं द्यायचा प्रयत्न करू. मनीष, तुला काही कन्क्लूड करायचं?
थँक्स मैत्रे. फार एक्झॉस्टिव्ह आणि रिक्वायर्ड सेशन होता, कारण बरेचदा ही एक माध्यमांनी पसरवलेली एक अशी किंवा हेडलाईन मॅनेजमेंट ऑब्व्हियसली केलेली दिसत होती पीएमसीनी याच्या मागे, की आता ती पर्यावरण मंजुरी मिळालेली आहे, त्यामुळे आता या प्रकल्पाला कोणाचा विरोध होणार नाही किंवा तो सगळा आता नदी सुधार सुसाट वगैरे असे मी न्यूजचे मथळे वाचलेले होते. पण खरं खरं काय आहे त्याच्या माग, हे सगळं तू उलगडून खूप छान सांगितलंयस. आणि येस, द केस इज वाईड ओपन, हे क्लिअरली दिसतंय त्याच्यात, किंवा रादर सियाच्या कंडिशन्सनीच ती अजून किती ओपन आहे हे दिसतंय. सो थँक्स अ लॉट. काहीतरी याच्यावर ऍज अ PRR ग्रुप डेफिनेटली आपण सगळे मिळून इनिशिएटिव्ह घेऊ की हाऊ वी कॅन स्ट्रेंथन दिस ज्युडिशियल प्रोसेस फर्दर, सो दॅट at least this unacceptable interventions are stopped or restricted. So thanks. That's all from me.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for participating, everyone, with such enthusiasm and with such consistency. मागच्या वेळेस पण जितके लोक सुरुवातीला होते तितकेच लोक शेवटपर्यंत पण होते, आणि आय थिंक आज पण तसंच झालंय. एखाद दोन जर सोडून गेले असतील तर त्यांच्याबद्दल माफी. But beyond that, thank you for everyone who has stayed back and listened to the whole session, and thank you to PRR, the PRR team, for inviting me. Karan, this is a very important issue, and I feel that as much as we can talk about it, we should. This is our river, this is our city, आणि आपणच आपलेच पैसे ह्याच्यात आहे, आपलंच आयुष्य ह्याच्यात जाणार आहे. So we need to really put as much attention to these issues, and I really am grateful to PRR for doing the work that they have done for the past many years. It's not easy. It's not easy to do work in general, and especially if that work is unpaid, if that work is quite often times looked down upon by many parts of society as being anti-development or something like that. This is not easy work that you guys are doing. So I want you to know that this is very, very important की असे लोक तर नक्कीच पाहिजे. आणि लोकतंत्राचा हेच अर्थ आहे. Voting is not the whole and soul of democracy, but exercising your right as a democratic citizen by voicing your opinion against something that is wrong. That is the point of democracy, and you guys are a great example of what it means to be a democratic citizen. So thank you for that, and I'm always available for anyone who has any further questions or discussions that you would like to do. Please feel free to reach out to me, and we can continue the discussion there. So thank you.
परफेक्ट. थँक्यू मैत्रेय. आणि तू जे बोललास, मला वाटतं की सगळ्या लोकांना जरा जास्त बळ मिळालेलं आहे तुला तुझ्या सगळ्या ह्या म्हणण्याबद्दल, आणि तू पण लढतो आहेस, त्याच्यामुळे आपण पुन्हा एकत्र भेटतच राहूया. ओके, थँक्यू. गुड नाईट.
नक्कीच. Thank you. Good night.